Okay.
And
David, I'm out of time. I could talk to you much more, but we are out of time at the end of our program. Thank you very much for your time, David Frum. We'll be back same time tomorrow.
I'm Jane O'Brien in Washington, and this is BBC World News America. Europe continues shutdowns as the US braces for a surge in COVID cases caused by the Omicron variant. We'll get the latest from around the globe. Tensions rise as Russian forces mass on the border with Ukraine. Our correspondent in Moscow asks the Kremlin to explain.
We're not re-examining the results of the Cold War. We're reassessing the expansion the West has carried out in recent years against Russian interests with hostile intent. Enough is enough.
A BBC investigation uncovers disturbing new evidence of atrocities against civilians by the military in Myanmar. And voters in Chile have picked their new leader. At 35 years old, Gabriel Boric will be the youngest person to serve as the country's president. Welcome to World News America on PBS and around the globe. The Omicron variant is spreading rapidly around the world, but depending on which nation you look at, the situation can be radically different. Some places, like South Africa and the UK, started to feel the effects of Omicron weeks ago, and their new waves of infections are therefore further advanced. Let's have a quick look at some of the day's other news now, and official figures from Hong Kong show the turnout in yesterday's elections hit a record low. Just over 30% of voters cast their ballots. Democratic activists had called for a boycott of the elections because every candidate had been vetted for their loyalty to Beijing before being allowed to take part. Rebel Tigrayan forces fighting the Ethiopian government say they are withdrawing immediately from neighbouring regions and have expressed hope that the move can lead to a ceasefire. This comes after pro-government troops have made significant military gains in recent days. The war in Ethiopia has killed thousands of civilians and left 9 million people in need of food. Now, a BBC investigation has revealed the details of a series of brutal mass killings of civilians by the Myanmar military. 4 villages in Keni Township in central Myanmar were targeted over a period of several weeks in July. It's a very distressing story indeed. You are watching BBC World News America. Still to come on tonight's programme. Pleas for supplies in the Philippines as the number of people killed by Super Typhoon Rai increases to 375. Officials in the Philippines say at least 375 people have been killed by the super typhoon that hit the country last week. The Philippine Red Cross has described scenes of complete carnage after the storm flattened homes, schools and hospitals. Thousands of military, Coast Guard and fire service personnel have been deployed to help in the relief operation. Our Philippines correspondent Howard Johnson sent us this report. OK, before we go, 2021 was a big year for billionaires going into space. Many of them just went for a few moments before coming back down to Earth. But not Yusaku Maezawa. The Japanese billionaire has just returned from a full-blown 12-day trip to the International Space Station. This was the scene earlier today as he emerged from his space capsule that had landed in Kazakhstan. The trip made him the first space tourist to travel to the International Space Station in more than a decade. I would settle for an on-time flight back to New Hampshire at this stage, but I will see you tomorrow. Do join me then on BBC World News America.
Hello there. Got a west-east divide shaping up with the weather.
We'll keep our fingers crossed. Lovely to talk to you. All the best. Now, just before we go, the newest member of the Biden family has made its first public appearance.
Hey, pal. How you doing?
This is Commander, a 4-month-old German Shepherd whose arrival at the White House was announced via this video, which comes with a jaunty jingle. Yeah, I think every dog should have a jaunty jingle. Commander is a gift from the President's brother James after their previous dog sadly died in June. That was Champ. This puppy will join the family from January. And there will also be a cat, a White House cat. I hope it's not called Larry. That might cause a diplomatic incident, might it? That's it from us. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Do join us for that. Goodbye.
I'm Jane O'Brien in Washington, and this is BBC World News America. Bracing for the surge, President Biden announces measures to tackle the Omicron variant sweeping across the US. More testing, more vaccines, but will it be enough? Meanwhile, scientists in South Africa are investigating whether some of these new COVID variants are being created inside people with damaged immune systems. A BBC investigation has uncovered the identities of many of the migrants who drowned last month when a boat capsized in the English Channel. And exploring the worlds of art and technology, American artist Laurie Anderson has a new multimedia exhibition. Welcome to World News America on PBS and around the globe. Well, we start tonight here in Washington, where President Biden has announced plans to step up the fight against the Omicron variant. He stressed that Americans should be concerned, but not panicked, as Omicron continues to spread rapidly throughout the country. The president made a flurry of commitments about creating new vaccination clinics and increasing access to testing. Let's have a quick look now at some of the day's other news. And at least 17 people have died and 60,000 displaced in the worst floods Malaysia has seen in decades. 3 days of torrential rain over the weekend caused severe flooding in 8 states, partially submerging towns and villages. There's anger against government agencies which have been accused of failing to issue storm warnings. A government minister in Madagascar has managed to swim ashore when his helicopter crashed after spending more than 12 hours in the water. Serge Gillet was one of 2 survivors from the crash, which happened during a mission to inspect the site of a shipwreck. You're watching BBC World News America. Still to come on tonight's programme. Thousands of people across the US are quitting their jobs in pursuit of new ones in what's been called the Great Resignation. But as we report from Kentucky, it's not only happening in big cities. The coronavirus pandemic has prompted many people to reassess their way of working and make a change. In America, more than 1 in 30 employees quit their jobs in September and October alone, and economists are calling it the Great Resignation. Our North America business correspondent Michelle Fleury has been to the state of Kentucky, where workers are leaving jobs at a particularly high rate. Laurie Anderson speaking to Bill McKenna. Now, before we go, we have some bug news for you. A researcher in Northern England recently found a fossil of a millipede that was more than 300 million years old. But that's not all, because this was no ordinary millipede. The prehistoric bug was 8 feet long and weighed more than 110 pounds. That's an 8-foot-long bug that weighed more than some humans. Glad they're being found in fossils and not in this studio. I'm Jane O'Brien. Thank you very much for watching BBC News, World News America.
Hello, bitterly cold weather across parts of Scandinavia and into Western.
Now, you probably remember that blockbuster film Snakes on a Plane. Well, hear about a rather alarming example in the UK. What about snakes in a shipping container? What you're looking at here is a saw-scaled viper discovered by a forklift driver in Salford in the northwest of England in a shipment of bricks. The species apparently survived 4,000 miles from Pakistan. It's one of the deadliest reptiles in the world. Let's hope it wasn't hungry after that long a journey. The RSPCA, an animal welfare charity, was called to the scene and rescued the viper. Those are our headlines.
I'm Michelle Fleury in New York City, and this is BBC World News America. From lockdowns in China to fourth doses in Israel, how countries are divided in their response to Omicron and how America's actions stack up. Meanwhile, concerns are being raised over the effects of pandemic lockdowns on the mental health of kids. We have a special report. And we report on the damage to an island named one of the best in Asia, devastated by the super typhoon that struck the Philippines. Also to Kyrgyzstan, where we report on environmentalists trying to save reindeer from the brink of extinction. Welcome to World News America on PBS and around the globe. The Omicron variant is fueling a new wave of COVID infections in dozens of countries. And while governments around the world recognise the threat that Omicron poses, there have been stark differences in the way they've responded to it. Some countries have prioritised their vaccination and testing programmes, while others have reimposed restrictions on the unvaccinated. You are watching BBC World News America. Still to come on tonight's programme, as Zimbabwe begins paying government workers bonuses in US dollars, we ask if this spells the end for the local currency. Zimbabwe has begun paying out bonuses to government workers in US dollars as a way to cushion against the effects of price increases and a falling local currency. When the public began rejecting the inflation-hit Zimbabwe dollar, authorities effectively abandoned it in favour of international currencies like the US dollar. The BBC's Shingai Nyoka reports from Harare. Great to see that footage there of the reindeer running in the wild. Now, before we go tonight, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, as of today, the days are starting to get longer, and some people are rather happy about it. Crowds gathered this morning at Stonehenge to watch the sunrise after the winter solstice. They were there to celebrate the end of the longest night of the year. And for those of you getting excited, the nights may be getting shorter, but only by about a second or so. Anyway, I am Michelle Fleury. That is it from all of us here at World News America.
Hello there, we're starting to see some changes to the weather across Western Europe.
Now, have you ever watched a cookery show and thought, that looks delicious, but it tastes good? Well, soon you may be able to find out what it tastes like. Or a Japanese professor has developed a new prototype lickable TV screen which can imitate food flavours. The device called Taste the TV uses 10 different flavour canisters which spray in combination to create the taste of a particular food. The flavour sample then rolls on hygienic film over a TV screen for the viewer to try. Professor Homi Mayushita from Meiji University in Tokyo says he built the prototype himself over the past year and that a commercial version would cost just under $900 to make. I wonder what newsreaders would taste of.
I'm Tawfik in New York, and this is BBC World News America. In Russia, President Putin insists on immediate guarantees that NATO will not expand further to the east. Here in the U.S., a jury has found former police officer Kim Potter guilty of manslaughter over the shooting of Dante Wright. In Hong Kong, a statue commemorating the deaths of protesters in Beijing's Tiananmen Square has been removed from a university campus. It was one of the few remaining memorials in the city. Health officials are encouraging people to get booster shots in the face of Omicron, but in many countries, people are still struggling to get an initial vaccine. We have a special report. And during the pandemic, many people relocated to be closer to their families. But for many in Europe, that meant moving to a whole other country. We report from Poland. Welcome to World News America on PBS in the UK and around the globe. We start tonight in Russia, where President Vladimir Putin has insisted that the West must give Moscow guarantees that NATO will not expand its alliance eastwards and admit Ukraine as a member. The remarks came during a 4-hour-long press conference in which Mr. Putin stressed that Russia does not want conflict over Ukraine. Let's take a look now at some other news. Ecuador has made it mandatory for people within the country to get the coronavirus vaccine following the arrival of the Omicron variant. Now, while dozens of countries have introduced new health measures in recent weeks, very few of them have outright mandated that people receive the vaccine. The American author Joan Didion, whose career chronicled the mood and chaos of life in the 1960s and 70s, has died at the age of 87. Her publisher said the cause was Parkinson's disease. Didion is largely credited with ushering in the new journalism genre of literary nonfiction, mining her richest material from her native California. Ethiopia says its troops have been ordered not to advance into the Tigray region. It comes after Tigrayan rebels called for a ceasefire and negotiations, which have ignited hope that they could lead to a resolution to the war in northern Ethiopia. You're watching BBC World News America. Still to come on tonight's program. Striking a pose, we meet a man who's using the art of photography to tackle and express his mental health.
Ring.
During this pandemic, thousands of people across the United States have given up life in big cities and decided to live in other parts of the country, often to be closer to their families. Well, in Europe, a similar phenomenon is happening, but instead of moving from city to city, some people are shifting from country to country. They made it all the way from the chimney to the inside of the hospital where they delivered the gifts. Well, remember, you can find everything on our website. I'm Tawfik. Thanks for watching BBC World News America.
Hello there, it's turning much milder across the western side of Europe thanks to a big Atlantic low.